Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach, and we're going to remove strings. I was looking through the code base in Rocks and again, just thinking about what could I do to potentially improve things and whatnot. And one idea I had is to actually eliminate the description that is passed into exceptions and also is in the member identifier attribute, and figuring that out at runtime. So let me bring up some code so I can illustrate what I mean. Okay, so here's an example, and just to illustrate the point. If you look at this getter, there's a chance that we may not find expectations, so we pass in found for get non-seal data. We also do that up here with a method, and sometimes a method will actually have two of these based on did they actually have values or not. But the point is, we get the description of that member here, and we pass that in when we create the code itself. That same value is also used in member identifier, and it's also what we use here. So I just changed all this recently so that they all have the same exact thing. But I started thinking about this, and I'm like, for longer, especially methods, if you have 2 or 3 values in here or parameters and their type names get to be quite long because we use fully qualified names, then we have that, we have to have it here. I mean, that's a given. But then we put it here, and then we're going to put it here, and then in verify we also do it. So we also get that description here. Now this is a lookup for the attribute. That's why the attribute has it. It looks for that identifier and then pulls out the description. Okay. But in all of these cases, it's only there for an exception. The ideal thing would be is that you never hit an exception. You have all your expectations met, verify passes, everything is good. So for the vast majority of cases, we shouldn't even have these strings around. Okay. And we can defer that to runtime and looking at our member using reflection to see what's its name, what does it return, what are the parameters, and so on. Now, hopefully I can get it to match exactly what I'm coming up with here. But as long as it's close enough, that's what matters. Because this is only just to help you in determining which member this didn't happen for. Arguably here, we wouldn't even need to pass it in, because the stack trace for an exception would actually show you which method this came from or which property this came from. We may not even want to do it here. We could just say no handlers were found, and then you look at the stack trace to say, well, where did this actually happen? I will probably still keep it in because it will be good to know which method it came from. We don't do it we don't tell the jitter anything like aggressively inline or not. It would be possible that a method could be inlined, although I don't think our implementations here are simplistic enough that it would do that, but you never know. Whether it did or not, reflection wouldn't matter because it's going to look at this member. And whether it's going to be there regardless, because you have to know, okay, this is what the method was. It's going to still be there from reflection from a assembly standpoint that it's there. Okay. So my point is, we may not even need to put that in there, but I think I'm going to keep it similar to say, well, which one, because then you can see it in the message. But I may also decide not to and just say no handlers were found. And then there's like no handlers were, or something else. I can't forget the other one, but not put in what location it's from, because that should be in the stack trace. Okay. And I could always add it back in if I think it's important or not. The time it does become important, though, is when you call verify, because it's going to go through all the expectations for all the handlers. And in that case, you may not, you want to know which one it came from at that point, if that makes sense. You don't want to just say like what's going to happen here is it would say mock type, the expected call count is correct, and you have to know which member it's from. You have to tell which member. So we would still need to do it here, but not with these exceptions, and we don't need to keep it here we can look this all up with reflection. And yes, that would make the performance arguably worse at runtime, but that's okay because exceptions are exceptional events. You really should not be running into them with this framework. So taking a little bit of a perf hit when you create the exception by getting this description, I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. And this will also remove us from having to put this string into our code generation. So that may help out in the long run too in making our code gen a little bit faster because we won't have to add this in. We won't have to add this in. You know, it would make things, I think, a little bit simpler. And yes, if I had an invocation here to say no handlers are found for this.getType.get member description, and I would know in this case it would be 0. If I didn't even omit that, that may make things a little bit smaller as well. That's why, even as I'm talking about this, I'm going back and forth on putting that description in here because you arguably don't need it. You would know from the stack trace that it came from this implementation. So we'll figure that out. We have to do it. We have to create it for the case for verify either way. So I already have a branch set up. I already have my steps set up. So we're going to go through these one by one. And I'm kind of glad that I made these comments identifier. There we go. These comments here that please refrain from using these because I'm going to do exactly what I just said, which is this is going away. Okay. We don't need this anymore. In fact, we don't even need a tuple assignment anymore. We can just do that. And then we can get rid of the param here, and then we can get rid of that. There. Okay. Pretty simple. So that's the first one done. Now, I think we actually do have, and good on me, that I have some attribute tests here. Well, we don't need that description anymore. We can just get rid of this. And we only need one assert now, and so all that goes away. All right, so that's done. Now, I'm not going to run the test yet because I've broken the world at this point. Even the integration tests expect that there will be a description passed into it, so I can no longer run the test, and now I've got to fix a whole bunch of things. So let's look for anywhere where I'm saying member identifier that. And we want to look through CS types. And we want to look in, oh, that stinks. I would like to be able to say, can you do that here? Oh, I guess you can. That folder. Okay. Find all. There's got to be some. It didn't. What? Really? That's surprising. I would have thought. I'm going to go right into one of these. Okay. I would have thought if I say member identifier that, and now let's say current project here, just because. There we go. All right. Oh, that's why. Okay, because I forget. I fully qualify them, so would not have found the bracket on the left. Okay, but there's only a handful of spots that we do this. So we can now remove all that. That looks good. And then we don't need this to be a raw string literal anymore. But what are you barking at? That. Okay. So now this actually has to be this, and that has to be that. There. And then this one, we get rid of everything here. Can I just say, oh, it doesn't let you do that? Yeah, that stinks. I was hoping it would be a way to say turn into like regular string or whatever. But that's all right. So we got those two. Let's get this one. Same thing. And we go all the way down to here. And now we're no longer doing any of these like contains or replaces, which admittedly would have been rare, but those may have still showed up. So we do that. We do that. So we're halfway done doing this, which is good. Get rid of all this. Make that single and that single and that single and I sound like a reverse dating service. Make that single. So let's go here and get rid of all that. I like getting rid of code. We're talking at work about the fact that, you know, if you don't maintain your code, I forget the actual phrase he said. Hold on, let me look it up. It wasn't the same thing, but I still like the quote. Unmaintained apps are a liability. And that is so, so true. Boom, you did that all for me. That's awesome. Cool. So then I think that was it. Let's do another search just to make sure. But I believe we got all of them. Yep, we did. Okay, cool. So that's done now. So we can take that off of our list. So we did this. We did that. Now here's the one that's a little bit harder. So there is a get member description. So let's close all these. Let's go to that. So this is correct. It's just now here we have to get the description at runtime. It's not going to be part of an identifier. Okay. So let's make this a block body. And then I'm going to have a static string get description for a member info member. And then here what we would say is, so we get the identifier, but now the member is a member info. Okay. So we say select member, get description for that member. There. Okay. In this, we could just say return string right now, but that's not what we want to do. And so we're going to have to probably do some switches here. And I don't know if I want to do switch expressions because these might get a little complicated. We need to know the return type or parameter type for a property indexer, because that's what either a get and or set. Need to know the name. Need to know generic parameters for a method only. And actually, I thought about this. The next thing I'm going to do is open generics. And while you still can't use generics for like a property or an indexer, you may now actually have a property or an indexer that's based off a type parameter when you do that. And I believe that should just be a wash. It should just fall out. But I was always aware with methods that you could have open generics on methods, which Rock supports. But that was never the case for properties or indexers. So now I just have to make sure that I'm always giving the right type, whether it's from a generic parameter or not. So in any event. So the name, generic parameters, and then the parameters for a method or indexer. A property wouldn't matter. And we could say for a property, if it's a set init property or indexer will have value. Though that's right. If we're going to use a property or method, we're just going to use the method itself. So always get to a method info type for a property indexer. Get the get set init method and use that. There. Okay. Can a local method have a local method? So, because what we want to do is we could do, why don't we do this? Member switch. See if I can do this off the top of my head. If member switch is a method info, which would be a method member, then what we want to do is, can we do this? I don't know if we can actually do this. Static string get method description with a method info. Okay, and then we do that. Can you embed them? I don't think you can. Oh, well, we need method there. Now, so if we said here return, does that actually work? It's never declare, but get method description of a method member. Oh, and then could we do, you had it there. Yeah. What's this? Only assignment. Oh, so we want to say here, return member switch. And if that's not true, we would just do that. Ha! Sorry. I got a little excited. That actually works. It looks a little odd, but it works. So, you know, hey. Okay, so now in this case, we want to say if it's a method info, that's fine. We'd also get into a property info, property member. This one's going to be a little bit trickier. Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to follow this with having a local method within a local method, but I don't think I can do switch expressions because a property could have a getter and or a setter, if I remember it. Like you can say here, property member, there's a get method and gets the get accessor for this property, right? And then there's set method, gets the set accessor for it. And then I think get accessors returns an array whose elements reflect the public get and set accessor to the property reflected by the current instance. Okay, non-public. We wouldn't care about that. So that's interesting. But we want to get the property for the specific accessor that we're finding. Well, now they ain't that fun. I just realized that. How do we know which one we've come from? Did I take that out? No, I didn't. Oh, thank God. Okay. The reason I just thought of this is I'm like, for a property, what I could do is if I go to the member identifier attribute, is we could have in here a value and then a property accessor that's nullable. Okay. So we're going to go back to this dot property accessor, which would be this, and then property accessor. You don't know what that is because I don't have it here. Public property accessor, which would be a get. Gets the property accessor. Okay. Now what are you complaining about? Oh, that's fine. We can make it public. Actually, I just realized something. I no longer use these. I don't think... Whoops. Oh, yeah, I do. Okay. Never mind that. I do now use them, but there is another issue that I want to do where I would have a property that has like specific get, set, init properties themselves that would be nullable. And then that way you can tell, do you have a get, do you have a set, do you have an init? And that would, I think, trickle through such that this enumeration would go away. But now it might be like half and half. I think I would still keep the get, set, init, but I would get rid of get and set, get and init. Okay, but we don't have that right now, so we're just going to keep these in here first. I know what I just said probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm just thinking of a situation that I've potentially will be getting rid of this. Okay, so now what we could do is, yes, the identifier, the property accessor value, if this identifies, if this is used to identify a property. Okay, now let me think about this just one sec. Is this the right way to do it? I have to be able to know which property you're actually looking at to do this. So what I would need to do now is go back in the sections where I'm doing a property and emit in there which one, the value that it is. Okay. Which it's a little bit messy, but I don't, it's not going to be get or set, get or init. It's going to be get and set or get init. It's going to be either get, a set, or an init. But I don't know how I can do this otherwise. Because when it gets back to that point, it has no idea which one it is. The saving, so it's like, well, now we have to add in that in the string as a value. which is not great. I was trying to get away from having anything put into that member identifier, but I don't know how else I'm going to be able to get around it. I would not know which value would be. At the very least, though, even though I'm omitting that in the code, what's actually stored in the attribute is a uint and an int. It's no longer a uint and a string. So from a storage perspective of what actually gets compiled in, it's much smaller. So still got that going for me. I can't think of a simplistic way to handle this other than what I'm showing here. So I'll have to go back in those and change them. All right, I'm going to stop here with this episode, and in the next episode, I will move forward and continue this work in hopefully making things a little bit better. And that will also give me some time to think about this in my head a little bit and go, is this truly what I want to do? Am I really gaining something? And should I continue making this a feature in Rocks? Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.